Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we have a 1997 Outback. This is a buddy of mine. He had me replace the head gaskets, basically did a full reseal on the engine. We did a couple videos on this car back I believe in 2018, so it's been a while since the repair was done. We did head gaskets, went through the heads completely, time belt and component kit, and a master seal kit. Addressed a couple other things as well while it was apart. Not really sure what the mileage is since the repair was done, but it's been a while. Like I said, I think it was 2018, early 2019, somewhere in there, so a couple years at this point, and he's been driving it very regularly. Well, recently he's been having an issue with a misfire. When you first start the car, engine cold, it would misfire until it got up to temperature and it would smooth back out. Already pulled the codes. I believe it was a cylinder 4 misfire. I'll put on the screen to confirm if I'm incorrect because I'm going off of memory here. So, not to dilly-dally, not to beat around the bush, but I'm going to go ahead and, as you see, I've removed the washer jug, the battery, and removed the air box. We're going to pull the spark plugs. We're going to do a cylinder leakage test just to make sure that we don't have any issue with the head gasket. Now, why would we have an issue with the head gasket after I placed it and used the updated MLS gasket? Well, after I got the engine back in and got the car running, I noticed that we were losing coolant periodically. We were getting low on coolant. Well, this car has an all-metal radiator in it, which is something I haven't really seen in any other Outback in the US. As far as I can recall, they all have the plastic surge tanks or aluminum. This one, I think, is a solid brass radiator, as far as I can tell. Well, long story short, I found that there is a leak in this radiator. And when he dropped this off to me a few days ago, I see that it still got that original radiator in it and it's still leaking. It's still wet and coolant is still running down the side of the radiator. Now, also, when he dropped the car off, I noticed that it was low on coolant. So low that the top radiator hose was completely empty. No coolant in it, which means the coolant crossover pipe did not have coolant in it either, and the coolant crossover pipe houses the engine coolant temperature sensor. When there isn't coolant in contact with the engine coolant temperature sensor, it's only reading hot air, and it's not going to give you a true reading if you're overheating the engine. And because of the boxer engine's design, if the coolant is low in the upper radiator hose, the coolant crossover pipe, it also can be low in the top parts of the cylinder head. So there could be spot overheating in the engine due to the fact that the hot coolant that's in the engine is not coming up and convecting and moving out of the coolant crossover pipe to the radiator. So that could possibly have damaged the new head gaskets. That's what we're going to check first with the cylinder leakage test. Now, another possible cause of this misfire when looking at the vehicle, it's a 1997 model. Looking at the date stamp on the OE Subaru factory spark plugs, they're marked 1996. This car has 228,000 miles on it as a 1997 model. These original spark plug wires are far past any reasonable expectation for them to last on a car. We might have a spark plug wire issue. So if I don't find any leakage of the head gasket with the cylinder leakage tester, I'm definitely just going to go ahead and throw a set of spark plug wires on it. One, because they are super old and original to the car and they've got 228,000 miles on them. There's no need to test them. They're past due for replacement. So go ahead and knock that out and then go from there. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out all 4 spark plugs, look at them visually, make sure there's no crust, there's no wetness on them, there's no coolant on them, and then we're going to go through and do a cylinder leakage test on all 4 cylinders, make sure no air is escaping from the combustion chamber into the cooling system. Once we confirm that, we'll go through and do a regular diagnosis for a misfire, checking the electrical components and checking possible issues with the fuel system, fuel injector. So let's go ahead and get into it. First plug out, doesn't look bad. really hard to beat the Koken Z Series 1/4 inch with 3/8 guts in it, the 2726Z-160. Awesome ratchet for Subaru dual overhead cam spark plugs. So, to save time, I think we're gonna go ahead and do cylinder leakage back here and see what we got going on. So guys, unfortunately I have found our issue. So we are now set on compression. We got a compression tester in here because I could not get the cylinder leakage tester to hold pressure in the cylinder. So I thought something was up, wasn't sure what, but compression tester is now in cylinder number 1. Had 180, 210 PSI, which this compression tester is a cumulative one, so not quite probably that much compression in there. But I checked cylinder number 4 back here, and we only had about 80 PSI of compression. Not good. All right, as we saw in cylinder number 1, we had between 180 and 210 PSI. Here is cylinder number 4. Barely have 75, 80 PSI. No good. That's why it's misfiring until it gets up to temperature. That would make me think it's rings not sealing, and once the rings expand due to the heat, they start sealing again and the misfire goes away. All right guys, day 2. As you saw, it got dark on me last night when we started the compression test. Cylinder 4 only had about 80, 75 PSI of compression. I believe the factory spec in the manual for the EJ25D is about 178 PSI. We saw that we had plenty in cylinder number 1. I just checked cylinder number 2 off camera. It was fine. Not gonna bother with cylinder number 3. 4 is our issue. Tried to do a cylinder leakage test the other day and I could not get it to hold more than 40% leakage. I've got it right now where it's holding 60% leakage, but tons of air coming out through the filler for the oil. So that would indicate that we've got bad rings. Air is blowing past the rings into the crankcase and coming out here. I noted when it was running it had excessive blow by, loosened the oil cap, and it danced around because of all the gases passing by the rings. So that would correspond with what the customer, what Brian was saying, that it ran rough, misfired when it was cold, but once they got up to temperature, it smoothed out. If we've got a sealing issue with the rings, if they have just worn, when they get hot, thermal expansion would take over, rings would swell up, and compression would partially return. So it looks like the bottom end of this engine is no good. Let's hook up the cylinder leakage tester real quick so you can see that. Hopefully the engine doesn't spin. And it did, unfortunately. So I'm gonna try to get it back in that spot for you guys so you can see it. Crazy thing about it is I'm putting 100 PSI of air in here and I can still turn the engine all the way around by hand. If you had a good sealing engine with good compression, you would not be able to do that. Yeah, it's so bad right now we cannot get it to hold top dead center to fill that cylinder with air. So here we go. Hopefully you can see that. So about 40% leakage, 50% leakage is as good as we can get on this cylinder. Ton of air escaping through the oil filler cap. And there you go, guys. Disappointing news on diagnosing this misfire. I hoped it was something simple like a spark plug wire, something of that nature. But as you see, it's a mechanical issue, low compression on cylinder 4, bad rings, a cracked piston, one of those 3. Hard to decipher exactly what it is, but it's gonna need a short block or a bottom end rebuild, which is really disheartening after a head gasket job and full engine reseal. like I said, about 2 years ago. So unfortunately, that's the end of this diagnosis. Not good. Gonna give it back to Brian and see what he wants to do, possibly drive it until it won't go no more. But, you know, it is how it is. So let you have a quick listen to it now that it's cold starting with the Misfire, and that'll do it for the video. So you see, pulling the plug wire off, we didn't lose anything, dead cylinder, dead miss right now until that cylinder warms up and the ring starts sealing and put more compression in that cylinder. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.